In the chaos of World War II, battles could last months, even years. But what if a single day was enough to change everything? These weren't generals or politicians. They were soldiers, ordinary men thrown into extraordinary situations. And in just 24 hours, their courage reshaped history forever. World War II was a global storm that swallowed nations, cities, and generations. Millions fought, but not every soldier's story was the same. Some were lost without a trace, their names fading into silence. Others, however, turned the tide of war in a single day, through bravery, sacrifice, or decisions that no one saw coming. These are the forgotten stories of soldiers whose actions in just one day changed the course of the deadliest war in human history. When we think of World War II, we often picture massive armies, long campaigns, and drawn-out battles that shaped the course of history. But sometimes history did not wait for months or years to turn. Sometimes it bent in a single day because of the courage, choices, and sacrifices of ordinary soldiers. These men were not always generals or commanders. Many of them were just names on the roster, carrying rifles, following orders, and hoping to survive. Yet within 24 hours, their actions altered the direction of the war. One of the most striking examples comes from June 6, 1944, D-Day. The Allied landings in Normandy were among the most ambitious military operations in history, but amidst the chaos of machine gun fire, crashing waves, and relentless bombardment, it was often small groups of soldiers who made the difference. Take, for instance, the men of the 2nd Ranger Battalion at Pointe du Hoc. Armed with ropes, ladders, and sheer determination, they scaled 100-foot cliffs under heavy German fire. Their mission was simple yet critical: destroy the enemy artillery that threatened the beaches. Many never made it to the top, but those who did managed to silence the guns. That single action protected thousands of Allied troops landing below. In less than one day, a handful of soldiers prevented disaster, proving that courage in the face of impossible odds could shape the destiny of nations. But it wasn't only in Europe that soldiers changed the course of the war within a day. Thousands of miles away in the Pacific Theater, another example of a single-day transformation unfolded. During the Battle of Guadalcanal, Sergeant John Basilone of the United States Marine Corps faced overwhelming Japanese attacks on his position. On October 24, 1942, Basilone and his men held their ground against waves of enemy soldiers. Machine guns overheated, ammunition ran low, yet Basilone refused to retreat. He repaired weapons in the middle of combat, carried belts of ammunition across enemy fire, and kept his men supplied when all seemed lost. By the end of the day, hundreds of enemy soldiers lay defeated, and the line held firm. Basilone's actions earned him the Medal of Honor, but more importantly, they bought the Allies precious time and secured Guadalcanal, a turning point in the Pacific. Not all stories of soldiers who changed the war in one day were about winning battles. Some were about sacrifice. In 1941, during the German invasion of the Soviet Union, a group of 28 Soviet soldiers, later known as the Panfilovs 28, stood their ground outside Moscow. Facing dozens of German tanks, they fought with rifles, grenades, and anti-tank weapons until the very end. Nearly all of them perished, but their defense stalled the German advance long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Though later debated by historians, the story became a symbol of unbreakable resistance. Whether every detail was true or not, the impact on morale was undeniable. In a single day, their courage inspired millions across the Soviet Union to keep fighting. Sometimes the soldiers who changed history were not even meant to fight that day. Consider the case of Desmond Doss, a combat medic in the Battle of Okinawa. Doss was unique. He refused to carry a weapon because of his religious beliefs, yet he volunteered to serve. On May 5, 1945, while his unit faced heavy fire, Doss stayed behind in the kill zone, rescuing the wounded one by one. He dragged, carried, and lowered men to safety, all without firing a single shot. By the end of that day, he had saved over 75 soldiers. His selfless bravery not only preserved lives, but also inspired his fellow troops to push forward. For his actions, Doss became the first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor. His story proved that courage was not always about taking life, but about saving it. Across every front of World War II, there were countless moments where one day made the difference. At Dunkirk in 1940, ordinary soldiers and even civilians worked together in a desperate evacuation. Hundreds of thousands of trapped Allied troops were rescued by a fleet of small boats crossing the English Channel under enemy fire. In less than a week, but especially in those first crucial days, the soldiers who held the line on the beaches gave the evacuation a chance to succeed. Without their determination, the war might have ended before it truly began. What unites all these stories is not just the heroism displayed, but the sheer unpredictability of war. Soldiers woke up expecting another day of survival, and by sunset they had changed history. For many, the cost was their own lives. For others, the reward was a medal or recognition, though often their names remain forgotten outside of military history books. But whether remembered or not, their actions ripple through time. They remind us that history is not only shaped by grand strategies and famous leaders, it is also forged in the mud, the blood and the fire of a single day. When ordinary soldiers find themselves in extraordinary circumstances, World War II was filled with stories of endurance, sacrifice and courage. But these stories of soldiers who changed the war in one day stand out because they remind us of the fragility of history itself. Had these men not acted, had they faltered for even a moment, entire battles could have turned. Nations might have fallen, and the world we know today could have looked very different. The fate of millions often rested on the shoulders of the few, and in those critical 24 hours, they carried that weight with unshakable resolve. The true weight of war often reveals itself in moments when everything hangs by a thread. In World War II, that thread was sometimes held together by the actions of a single soldier or a small group in just one extraordinary day. These were the moments when the war teetered on the edge, victory or defeat, survival or collapse, and the courage of a few made all the difference. One of the clearest examples of this came during the Battle of El Alamein in North Africa. The Desert War was brutal, unforgiving, and stretched both men and machines to their limits. In late 1942, as the British Eighth Army pushed to break German defenses, small units were sent to cut supply lines and cripple enemy positions. Among them was a young soldier named George Cairns. In a single day of fierce combat, Cairns led his section against an entrenched enemy stronghold. Despite being badly wounded, he pressed forward, clearing machine gun nests one by one. His actions opened a gap in the enemy line, allowing the main assault to push through. That day marked the beginning of the Axis retreat from North Africa. It was one man's refusal to give up, even while bleeding on the battlefield. That triggered a turning point in the Desert War. But perhaps one of the most dramatic single-day acts in the war came from a soldier who never fired a shot in aggression. On January 12, 1945, in the freezing forests of the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge, a medic named Robert Wright found himself surrounded by chaos. His small makeshift aid station inside a Belgian church was caught between advancing German troops and retreating Allied forces. For an entire day, Wright treated soldiers from both sides, Americans, Germans, anyone who was wounded. The church became a sanctuary where, for a brief moment, the brutality of war paused. His courage to act with humanity under fire did not just save lives. It created a story that lived on long after the battle ended. In the middle of destruction, Wright proved that even in a single day, compassion could be as powerful as courage. The climax of these stories often lies not only in their danger, but in their unpredictability. Take, for example, Audie Murphy, who would later become one of the most decorated American soldiers of World War II. On January 26, 1945, near Holtzwihr, France, his unit was under overwhelming German attack. Outnumbered and outgunned, many soldiers pulled back to regroup. But Murphy, refusing to abandon the line, climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and single-handedly held off the enemy for over an hour. He fired machine guns until ammunition ran dry, called in artillery strikes dangerously close to his own position, and fought until reinforcements returned. By the end of that day, his stand had stopped the German advance cold. Murphy's defiance in a single day changed not only the outcome of the battle, but became a legend of bravery remembered across generations. On the Eastern Front, where battles stretched across vast plains and claimed millions of lives, there were also single days that changed everything. In the defense of Stalingrad, Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev became a symbol of resilience. During the height of the battle, on a single freezing day in 1942, Zaitsev is said to have eliminated more than 10 enemy soldiers, including officers, within hours. Each shot was not just about survival, it was about breaking enemy morale. His actions inspired thousands of Soviet defenders who were exhausted and demoralized by the brutal street fighting. One man's accuracy over the course of a day became a weapon far greater than the bullets he fired. Zaitsev's legend spread through the ranks, and his presence gave soldiers the strength to hold out against seemingly impossible odds. And then, there were the stories where soldiers changed the war in one day by giving everything they had, including their lives. On the Philippine island of Luzon in 1945, Private First Class Manuel Perez Jr. faced a heavily fortified Japanese position. His unit was pinned down, unable to advance. Perez charged forward alone, weaving through enemy fire, destroying machine gun nests with grenades, and clearing trenches with relentless determination. In less than a day, he eliminated dozens of enemy soldiers and opened the path for his unit to move forward. Perez did not survive long after that battle, but his sacrifice on that day saved countless lives and played a decisive role in liberating the Philippines. What makes these moments so gripping is that they defy expectation. No one planned for a single soldier to change the tide of history. No strategy could predict that an individual's bravery in one day could rewrite the outcome of battles. Yet again and again, World War II revealed how fragile history is, how close it often comes to breaking, and how one act of defiance, sacrifice, or compassion can hold it together. The climax of these stories also forces us to confront a haunting truth. Many of these soldiers never lived to see the impact of their actions. They did not know that they had shifted the balance of power, saved their comrades, or inspired entire nations. They only knew the urgency of that moment, the reality of that day. And perhaps that is what makes their actions even more powerful. They were not fighting for glory or recognition. They were fighting for survival, for duty, for each other. Imagine the chaos of those days, smoke filling the air, the roar of artillery shaking the ground, the cries of the wounded echoing across the battlefield. Amidst all of it, a single man climbs onto a burning tank destroyer, or rushes into enemy fire with nothing but grenades, or refuses to abandon the wounded in a church surrounded by enemies. These were not scripted moments. They were choices made in the heat of battle, with no certainty of survival, and yet their impact outlived the war itself. In the end, the climax of World War II's soldier stories lies in their raw unpredictability. In just one day, against all odds, ordinary men created extraordinary outcomes. Their actions ripple through history, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, the choices of the few can determine the fate of the many. As the dust of World War II finally began to settle, the world was left scarred by destruction on a scale it had never seen before. Entire cities were reduced to rubble, nations were torn apart, and millions of lives were lost. Yet buried within those overwhelming numbers were the singular, powerful stories of soldiers whose actions on just one day changed everything. They may not have been kings or generals, yet their courage altered the course of the deadliest conflict in human history. Looking back, what strikes us most is not just the scale of their bravery, but its humanity. Consider the Rangers at Pointe du Hoc, scaling impossible cliffs under fire to silence artillery guns. On that single day, they gave thousands of Allied soldiers a fighting chance to survive the beaches of Normandy. Think of Sergeant John Basilone at Guadalcanal, who fought against impossible odds to keep his unit supplied and alive through the long hours of a brutal night. Their choices were not about ambition or glory. They were about doing what needed to be done in the face of certain death. History often celebrates great leaders, but in truth, wars are won in moments like these, when a soldier makes the impossible choice to stand, to fight, to sacrifice. The conclusion we draw from these stories is simple but profound. The fate of nations can rest on the shoulders of a single man in a single day. Without Audie Murphy holding the line on that burning tank destroyer, without Desmond Doss rescuing the wounded at Okinawa without a weapon in hand, the battles might have gone differently. Without countless unnamed soldiers who gave everything in one critical day, history itself might have shifted. But beyond the battlefield victories, there is another lesson to be learned. War does not just test strength, it tests humanity. We saw that in the story of Robert Wright, the medic who turned a Belgian church into a sanctuary, treating enemy and ally alike. In that one day, he reminded the world that compassion has a place even in the heart of darkness. His actions tell us that war may shape men into soldiers, But humanity cannot be erased. If anything, it shines brightest when everything else falls apart. As we conclude these stories, it is important to remember that not every soldier who changed the war in one day lived to see its end. Manuel Perez Jr. charged through enemy fire in Luzon, clearing positions that no one else could. His courage gave his unit a path forward, yet his life was the price paid for that victory. Many like him lie in unmarked graves, their names fading into silence, while the consequences of their actions live on in the world we know today. Their sacrifice reminds us of a haunting truth. History's greatest shifts are often written in the blood of the forgotten. And so, when we ask ourselves how World War II was won, we must not look only at the sweeping campaigns, the maps with arrows and strategies, or the speeches of leaders. We must look at the single days, the 24 hours when an ordinary soldier became extraordinary. Their courage did not just save lives, it shaped the very outcome of the war. Each action was like a stone cast into a pond, sending ripples far beyond what they could imagine. The power of these one-day stories is also a reminder for us today. It tells us that history is not a distant, untouchable force. It is made by people, in moments of choice, often under circumstances they never asked for. These soldiers did not wake up on those days thinking they would become heroes. They woke up tired, hungry, frightened, and uncertain. And yet when the moment came, they acted with courage that changed the world. If history can turn on the decisions of a few men in one day, then it reminds us that even in our own lives, our choices carry weight far greater than we often realize. As we close this journey through the forgotten corners of World War II, we cannot help but reflect on the cost. Yes, there were victories born in a single day, but there were also lives cut short. Families left waiting for soldiers who would never come home, and memories scarred by loss. For every soldier who changed history in one day, there were thousands who simply tried to endure one more day, who fought with equal courage but without recognition. Their silence is as much a part of history as the heroism we remember. But perhaps this is the ultimate conclusion, that remembering their stories, both great and small, is itself an act of honor. Every soldier who vanished, every soldier who fought, every soldier who changed the war in a single day deserves to be remembered. They were the beating heart of history, and through their lives and deaths the world we know today was shaped. So as we end this story, imagine standing on those battlefields, Normandy's cliffs, Okinawa's ridges, the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the endless deserts of El Alamein. Imagine the silence now, broken only by the wind where once gunfire and screams filled the air. It is in that silence that the echoes of their choices remain. The day may have passed, but the impact has not. Their courage lingers, not just in history books, but in the freedoms and the world that their sacrifices secured. In the end, World War II was won not only by strategies and armies, but by individuals who, in the span of a single day, carried the weight of history. They remind us that one person's courage can change everything, and as long as we tell their stories, they have not vanished. They live on in memory, in history, and in the truth that even one day, one soldier can alter the fate of the world.